VTubers. Start off. Is your mic on?
The mic's on. Not a VTuber thing without Scott.
That's over there. So show of hands, who in here doesn't already know what a VTuber is? Is there anyone who actually came in here blind who doesn't? Yeah, the slide was made more than 2 weeks ago.
I'm not thinking Vesta on it. Okay?
R.I.P.
Let's put things on.
How many people in the room regularly watch VTubers already? Okay, so like maybe half, but 20 people here raise their hands. So yeah, we're going to be talking about VTubers sort of from an audience perspective. Neither of us are VTubers ourselves right now. I am an online content creator, and we're both just VTuber fans, and we wanted to talk about some of the stuff that goes into putting the talents out that people don't necessarily see or think about when they're just watching streams every day. So it sounded like everybody kind of already knew, but just to go over briefly what a VTuber is. It's a virtual YouTuber, so it's sort of like a regular streamer, but instead of streaming using a camera or with no face at all, they're using a virtual avatar to sort of express what they're feeling and everything they're saying. And yeah, they're usually live. They can be on websites like Twitch where they're live. They can be on YouTube live streaming. But VTubers can also make pre-recorded videos, just like other content creators can. And so just a couple of examples here. We've got YouTube and Twitch. And what do VTubers do? Once again, a lot of the same things that regular IRL streamers do. They do a lot of gaming just because that is an easy thing to work into the VTuber format. They do chatting with their audience is obviously an easy thing to do with any format. They can also do things that IRL streamers do you wouldn't necessarily think that a virtual avatar could pull off, like cooking is a physical thing. A lot of them sing, which isn't necessarily physical, but VTubers have some limitations that IRL streamers don't, obviously, and then they've also got other advantages that we'll get into in terms of what they can do in their streams. So one of the aspects of VTubers that kind of sets them apart sometimes from IRL streamers is that they often have sort of characters to them. And those characters can have backstory or unique traits to differentiate them from other streamers. A lot of times a streamer, a VTuber, will have an avatar that's based on maybe a certain animal or just a certain character archetype, and they'll kind of try to carve out a niche around that. And it's a little bit easier to do that when you can control the visual aspect of what your character looks like versus having to do that in front of the camera. A lot of times character traits are more of a starting point. VTubers don't always stick to the same character traits that they start out with if they debut and they've got a backstory. They might keep some of that backstory reference from time to time, or they might just throw it out depending on how their content evolves. And a lot of times the character traits that VTubers have, they're some of the same character traits that the person playing that VTuber has, the real person behind it, but they typically exaggerate those character traits into something that comes across a little bit more in content and can be more entertaining and just make a bigger impact than regular people and how they would regularly talk and stuff. Another sort of advantage to VTubers in streaming is the anonymity aspect. Some people want to get into streaming online, but they don't necessarily want their face out there. Or they might not even want their name out there, depending on who you are and what kind of environment you work in. You might want to have sort of a safer space where you can go online and stream and not have to worry about people attributing your words to you exactly. And so a VTuber provides sort of a way to still connect with people visually, but still be able to have a little bit more of a filter before people can figure out who you are when it comes to things that you're saying and things like that. Now there are some caveats to that. Established creators that then turn into VTubing, they're often recognized anyway, even if they never reference their IRL personality on their VTuber channel. People figure it out based on their voice or based on stories that they tell. A lot of times once a couple people figure it out, algorithms on YouTube or Twitch start recommending the IRL channel to people who watch the VTuber or vice versa. So that can kind of be broken, and you do still want to be careful about that if you already have an online presence before you get into this. The other caveat there is that if you're going to be trying to make money VTubing, which a lot of people do successfully, then you are going to need to provide companies with your identity just for like tax purposes, and so somebody out there is going to know who you are. Obviously, like YouTube and Twitch, they normally don't have data breaches, but it's a consideration. If you want to be 100% anonymous, it's probably just going to stay a hobby, and you probably won't be able to make much money with it. So we're going to go over just briefly a history of VTubers and sort of how the industry got to where it is today. And these are some of the earliest VTuber-like personalities online that we're aware of. Do you want to talk about them a little bit?
Yeah, on the left we have Supersonico. Thanks. Yeah, on the left we have Supersonico, who is a mascot for a visual novel company known as Natural. She was used as a, so we didn't even have facial movement, it was just basically a JPEG with a voice behind it. But they used it to advertise their new visual novel. On the right we have like some that was only used for like 2 months, same thing, JPEG with voice. It was used to do the web. It's basically a web VTuber.
Yeah, so some of the earliest examples of things that were sort of like VTubers, they're similar to what we call PNG tubers today, which is a VTuber that doesn't have a rigged model. They're just streaming with like a face. Maybe they've got a couple different expressions they can switch between, but it's not animated. And even today, that's still a sort of cheap and low budget option to get into VTubing if you don't have the money to commission a rig to animate your character. If you can commission just the sprite, then you can take that sprite a really long way if you've got a good personality and content behind it. So yeah, the earliest examples were really just single sprites, and then they started adding different character expressions, and it got more fluid over time, and eventually we started actually having animated characters, which are closer to what we have today as VTubers. Now here we have a pretty primitive early VTuber who did vlogs, and the production behind this particular one was very different from VTubers that we know today. This was a VTuber named Ami Yamamoto, and she was a vlogger. She would actually do IRL vlogs, and then the company doing this, they would, in post-production, they would put an avatar over where she was standing all the time and sort of interacting with people. And so she was able to actually not have a lot of restrictions people have working with our current typical VTuber tools by doing that, but then it was a lot more post-production work, making sure that covering up worked properly, and when you're filming it, making sure you're blocking it so that that's possible, and all of that. So that was sort of still getting closer to what we have today, but not quite what VTubers are currently known for. These are some of the earliest VTubers that we currently think of when we think of VTubing. And the one on the left is Kizuna Ai, and she was the first big VTuber. Do you want to talk about her a little bit?
Yeah, Kizuna Ai's backstory is basically that she was the first actual Wanda's VTuber, and they used her as an idol type of character. She's owned by a company, and she's actually been replaced by multiple voice actresses because it's the same mascot. The idea was to make an idol who never ages. Yeah, the company behind this, Activate, their goal was something within Japanese idol culture is idols sort of, they age with what they're doing, and then eventually they're expected to sort of stop their activities when they get too old, which is inconvenient for the idol, and it's also inconvenient for fans who like those idols. But it's just part of their culture. We could do a whole separate panel on just idol culture in Japan. But it has referenced a lot of, or it has influenced VTubers quite a bit. So the company that made Kizuna Ai, they were imagining, let's make an idol that doesn't age out, that doesn't have to graduate. Now it's sort of ironic, back in 2022, she had an online concert where it was kind of her final concert, and then she went on indefinite hiatus. I don't know, what the company did that for, because theoretically they could have replaced the voice actress, like you said, or they could have kept going somehow. But even though she could have theoretically gone on forever, she ended up stopping fairly early. She is still around though. She's still actually uploading a video here or there every 6 months, so she hasn't disappeared entirely, even though she's graduated. About 90% of Kizuna Ai's content was pre-recorded uploads. So she wasn't doing as much live streaming. She was kind of before that development took place. On her channel, so she had 993 pre-recorded videos on her channel and only 112 live archives. So about 90% of Kizuna Ai's content was pre-recorded, just to demonstrate that. So another early-ish VTuber is Tokino Sora, and she was the founding member of a Japanese company called Hololive, which is now one of the largest VTuber companies in existence. And when many people think of VTubers, or many people get into VTubers, Hololive is often one of the first groups that they come across. Tokino Sora started when she started out doing some of the same general vlogging content that Kizuna Ai did. As you can tell, their designs are fairly similar, and the idea was initially similar, let's make an idol that doesn't age. And they were actually so similar that sometimes they would actually do videos on each other's channels, impersonating each other just for fun, and seeing how much the audience caught on.
But with HoloLive, Tokino sort of kind of moved things into more of the live streaming area. HoloLive used to be a video game company, development company. They started out doing VR video games, and so they had a lot of 3D experience, and they went into the VTuber market, and they were looking to sort of optimize how to crank that content out. And they found eventually that doing live streams, you don't have to worry about post-production at all. You do have to worry about a little bit more preparation to make sure your live streams go well. But they found that they could get a lot more hours of content out and be more successful doing live streams than just doing all pre-recorded content. So yeah, as of earlier this year, Sora had 174 pre-recorded uploads and 652 live stream archives. So she still did some pre-recorded uploads. Sometimes it's just more convenient to do that, but she definitely helped move things in the direction of live streaming that people typically associate with VTubers now. So yeah, Kazuna I was the first big VTuber in the sense of that word, and then Sora brought that over to live streaming. And that's probably why the term VTuber suggests live streaming today. So talking about more VTubers than just those two, continuing on though with the HoloLive thing that Sora started, these are the two biggest VTuber companies that are online and in the world right now. Sora is part of HoloLive, which is owned by a Japanese company called Cover Corporation. HoloLive has 75 active members, plus a couple that have left over the years. And the VTuber with the most YouTube subscribers in the world, named Gargura, she is part of HoloLive's English branch. So it's interesting that she holds that record title, but the English branch is actually fairly small. HoloLive only has 10 English members. They have 15 as of now, yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, Advent debuted at the end of July.
Right, yeah. So it is 15 now, and it's 12 Indonesian pounds. But they've got a lot more Japanese. As you can see, the number of people on the screen, and this is not a fully up-to-date family photo, but these are semi-up-to-date family photos for both companies. It's kind of funny, the HoloLive one, they're all just thrown up there, and then the Nijisanji one, it's like they're standing on riders for a school photo. But yeah, related to that, so over on the Nijisanji side, that's owned by a Japanese corporation called Anycolor. And yeah, they've got a lot more talents. They go for a little bit more quantity than HoloLive does. Nijisanji also holds a VTuber called Kazuha, who is the most subscribed male VTuber in the world. So they've got that title right now. Sort of related to that, Cover Corporation has another sub-unit called Hollow Stars, which is sort of a male branch of HoloLive. HoloLive itself is technically all girls, and Hollow Stars is all guys, at least in terms of the characters they're playing, not necessarily the people behind the voices. But they do interact sometimes, and they both appear in promotional materials together for HoloLive and for Cover Corporation, but they do have sort of a superficial split there just to uphold HoloLive is more into that Japanese idol culture thing. Nijisanji is a little bit more co-educational. They do split up the male and female groups a little bit when they debut, but they are much more used to collaborating with each other and stuff without having to worry about it being as much of an event. So yeah, both of these companies are very large right now. HoloLive has over 70 million YouTube subscribers with all of their talents combined. Nijisanji has over 60 million. HoloLive is ahead by a tiny bit. What I've heard is that Nijisanji is actually more popular in Japan, but HoloLive is more popular worldwide, and that's what gives them that sort of total numbers edge.
I think something has been featured in manga.
Yeah. I mean, both companies are having starting to have appearances in other media. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. Both of these companies are currently listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. As of today, Anycolor was trading for $24.21 per share, and Cover was trading for $15.95 per share. So these are both public companies that have actual investors paying into them now. This was a sort of recent development. Earlier this year was just when HoloLive got approved to go on there, and so yeah, that's been continuing to develop, and we'll kind of see how that affects the content in terms of having public investors sort of have some maybe sway over what the company's actually doing.
If we invest enough money, we can put Vespa back, okay? So it's all pool and money together. We can bring back Vespa and Magni. It won't cost that much, boys.
Coco.
Yeah.
Season V social, she's too far gone. We can still bring back Vespa and Magni. So if we buy HoloLive, if we all buy HoloLive, like the whole month, we can bring back Lucio also.
I'm sure that here in Denver we can take over that Japanese delegation. We'll do it. We'll bring them all here for NDK next year or something like that. As people pointed out earlier, just a couple weeks ago, we wanted to talk about some of the newest talents in both of those companies that we're talking about. And HoloLive EN Gen 3 one named Advent. They debuted. This is their promotional image. And I wanted to also show you an image of their sprites together, and the reason for that is it's very interesting. Hololive typically debuts generations in groups of 5. They've got 5 individual people on 5 channels, but this latest generation, they actually had 2 people. They go by Fuwawa and Mokoko, and they're the 2 the blue and pink dog characters there. And they're actually sharing a channel. Hololive debuted these 2 talents on a single YouTube channel. That was really interesting for me to see. I've actually been watching a pair of Twitch streamers for many years that they do the same thing. They're 2 just friends who share the same channel. These 2 are actually twin sisters, so it's very convenient for them to always be in the same space for streaming and stuff. But it's been sort of a development because other streamers, other people, even in Hololive, when they want to play like a 2-player game, they have to go and find somebody to collab with. With these 2, they've already got 2 people. And it's also a lot easier to fill up dead space in a stream when you've got more than 1 person. And so it'll be interesting to see. It's cool that the technology has evolved this far to where they can actually be sitting next to each other and the camera's tracking them each separately for their individual avatars. And it'll be interesting to see how much that sticks and spreads to other talents and other groups. We also have the latest Nijisanji Ian wave here, and it was called Crisis. And we've got the 3 people here who were debuted, and then there's a 4th one who was supposed to be debuted and then didn't. And the interesting thing about these VTuber companies, they are very professional. They actually handle things very professionally, and so you don't always hear about the things that go wrong behind the scenes. This was a case where Nijisanji put out like a promotional video on Twitter that had this 4th character in it. He never had a name, and something happened behind the scenes where he never ended up actually debuting. They just sort of retconned him out, and they debuted the other 3 by themselves. And so, yeah, when you're talking about these VTuber companies, especially the Japanese companies, all their public statements are always very sanitized, and we don't always know the full story behind what goes on in those particular companies. So it's something to consider if you're thinking about joining a VTuber company versus going solo, or joining a Western company versus trying to join one of the Japanese companies. Sort of that work culture that you're going to be in, and the culture that your fans will be getting information about you through. Yeah, the company has the rights. So some other companies that are out there are up here, and these are just a small selection of current ones. There are a lot of companies out there. There are Japanese companies, there are Western companies. There are also companies that have gone defunct. One of the very first Western VTuber company was Sugaria. They debuted their first talent in June 2020, so that was the first time anyone not in Japan decided to try and get into this VTuber thing as a professional company thing. And they worked pretty well with their talent in terms of talent relations, but they had some mismanagement, they had some funding issues, they had issues with their merch going out of stock too quickly and not making all the money they could from hype from their talents, and yeah, they ended up closing down. And they also lost some of their talent due to just poaching and leaving for other companies. So yeah, the companies don't always survive, and that's something to consider. Once again, if you're going to join a company that's lesser known, or if you're going to try and start your own. Doesn't always work out, but you can always try again or join someone else. I also wanted to mention there are defunct branches and subsidiaries of other companies that are still around too. Sometimes they spin off portions of themselves to sort of protect the rest of it. And the example for that one, Hololive CN, Hololive China, used to be a branch. Like I said, Hololive has their Japan branch, their Indonesian branch, and then their global English branch. They used to have a 4th one in China, but they ended up having to shut that one down due to political issues that were occurring and sort of affecting the rest of their talents. So once again, when you get into multinational corporations, weird things can happen, and there's risks involved in doing that.
And in addition to that, Nijisanji is closing down the Indonesian branch, because it was originally used as their English branch, but with the English branch taking over, they have no use for the Indonesian branch anymore. So now the Indonesian branch of Nijisanji is shutting down completely.
That's interesting. Yeah, the Hololive Indonesian branch is a very interesting position because they speak, typically all their Indonesian talents at some level, they speak Indonesian obviously, but they also speak Japanese, and then most of them also speak English pretty well. So they're sort of competing with all the other branches. So I can kind of see how Nijisanji would arrive at that. And then of course, we're talking a lot about companies, but you can also just do VTubing yourself. You don't need to join a company right away or at all to get into this, whether it's as a hobby or if you want to try and start your own company. Just a couple examples of indie VTubers. Cowboy Kiwami is one that I personally know online. On the right, we've got Riz TV. She was at another anime convention in Denver recently. And so both of these are examples of VTubers who they are doing their thing. Some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger and more popular. But you don't necessarily have to join a company right away. We've got more examples of that over here with popular indie VTubers. You want to talk about some of those?
Yeah, Cyclone is the most popular VTuber on Twitch.
Indie VTuber.
Yeah. She has about 1.5 million followers on Twitch.
Can you get your mic closer so back in here? Like closer.
I don't know how, I don't use mics.
It's 2023.
Here, that's easier.
Onigiri is a famous cooking VTuber. She usually cooks. That's what she's known for. Cooking. Soto, he's the most popular indie male VTuber. He has around 1 million Twitch followers as well. And then you have Shijori UI. She's actually the artist for a few Hololive talents. But she also streams with both Hololive and Nichisanji, which is very rare for those companies to stream with indie VTubers.
Yeah, that's a great segue into, once again, just because you're an indie VTuber, you're not necessarily even capping your own popularity or your connections with other VTubers. In her case, the fact that she was an artist for some of the VTubers in bigger companies probably helped give her those connections. But the people from the companies do collab with independent people, when they feel like it. It's an industry, and you go out and network. Just like any other industry. And yeah, with Onigiri, with the cooking thing, a lot of VTubers these days are sort of getting into this mixed stream where you've got the virtual avatar on screen, but then you've got a camera pointed at your hands, usually wearing gloves, so as to cover up any identifying features and sort of preserve the... Yeah, exactly. Preserve the feeling that you're watching this virtual person. Onigiri was one of the first VTubers who did that, and she did that as an independent, and she started this trend that's now penetrated into the big companies. So if you're looking to get started as an independent, maybe you can take a look at, what is something that currently VTubers aren't able to do, or what's something they haven't tried doing that IRL people do, and can I come up with any creative solutions to do that? So this is one more VTuber, and when we're talking about the technical evolution, VTubers a lot of the time, and we'll talk about in-depth the tech in a minute, but a lot of the time they've got 2D tracking, sometimes they have 3D tracking. This is an independent VTuber who has very good 3D tracking for an independent VTuber.
Rest in peace.
So this is an example of what she can do in terms of her tracking. And she's wearing a motion capture suit right now, and it's sort of like a virtual reality gaming setup. But she can actually do full flips. She's not wired to anything that would prevent her from doing that, and that's kind of where the tech is getting. She's also got some acrobatic skill, which obviously doesn't always go perfectly, but if I can.
She can do flips so she doesn't fall down now.
Yeah. But yeah, once again, if you find something and if you just push the tech a little bit, or you push the medium a little bit, it can really set yourself apart. She's very popular. She is an independent VTuber, but she's got 2.1 million subscribers on YouTube and 1 million followers on TikTok. So yeah, it can get you very far. So talking about how this actually works a little bit behind the scenes. Most people know the basics for this. With regular streaming, you're in front of the camera. That goes into a piece of software that is taking your camera and encoding it. An example of that software would be OBS Studio. There are other options too. But then you're streaming that with that piece of software to YouTube or Twitch or whatever other website you're streaming on. With a VTuber, it's almost the same process. You're just adding an extra step in the middle, and that is somehow you are taking that camera feed or whatever other visual, you can substitute that out with more accurate motion capture or things like that. But you're taking that physical recording and you are translating it into a virtual avatar somehow. And when it comes to setting that up, this is the graph. I put it on here. It's got a lot of words. I just thought it was funny because it's got so many words, and it's basically just saying the more money you spend, the more you can do, which is kind of intuitive. But you can get started for quite cheap, regardless of that. So just talking about some of the popular and most commonly used applications out there. Live2D Cubism, a lot of people just call it Live2D for short. That's the name of the company who makes it. This is the software that people commonly use to rig VTubers. And so what this is doing is you go and you pay an artist, or you draw yourself if you're an artist, your sprite. And then you go into Live2D and you tell it where you're going to stretch that sprite, where you're going to fold it, and you're basically making that sprite animatable so that you don't have to manually switch between every single frame, when or draw every single frame to show different expressions and movements. And then you're going to take that rig that you get from Live2D and you're going to put it into software such as VTube Studio. That's actually going to take that rig and it's going to track what you're doing in real time in front of you, and it's going to apply it to that rig. And that's how you get the actual expressive movements and real-time tracking that VTubers use. Something like VTube Studio is going to output a virtual webcam to OBS or whatever other streaming software you're using. And so just instead of adding your normal webcam in there, you would add the output from that. VTube Studio is not the only option. There are cheaper and other just alternatives. VUP or Virtual Up is another option that does basically the same thing as VTube Studio. And there's all kinds of even cheaper options out there. Not everything is free. VTube Studio is actually free to use with a watermark, but you have to pay to not have a watermark. Even if you are on the lowest budget, if you go on Steam and just search like VTubing programs, you'll come up with some very obscure options. Obviously, the more popular of a program you use, the better and easier of a time you'll probably have when it comes to setting things up. But there are a lot of cheaper programs out there too that you can get into. So we did just want to show you, I've got a computer here with VTube Studio on it, so we're going to demonstrate how that actually looks when you're controlling it. And we will switch this. Hope that doesn't break everything. Ooh.
Well, now you can.
Stuff.
Got it.
All right, perfect. So this is Steam right here in VTube Studio. I've installed it as a Steam app. I'm not going to show you live 2D cubism today. I'm going to play anyway. It's a very complicated program, live 2D. So getting your rig, that's why a lot of people commission their rigs. You pay someone who's a professional in that to do it. It's possible to do it yourself. But yeah, what I'm going to show you is once you've got your rig, you're going to bring it into VTube Studio, and this is sort of how you're going to control it. So we're loading it up here.
And just for reference, to commission the art and to get it rigged up, it's going to cost around $1,000. But you can do it by yourself.
Yeah, and I mean that's
presets.
one of the reasons why a lot of VTubers out there are artists, because they've already got at least half the cost covered by being able to do their own art.
So there are barriers to entry, but there can be no barriers, but it's going to be harder because you got to do it yourself.
Yeah. So here in VTube Studio, though, once you've got your rig and everything, you can select your background here. I've just got, this is a default avatar, so if you install VTube Studio, there are some free ones you can use. It's not going to be very uniquely identifiable because it's included with the program. Lots of people are able to use it. But we can go in here and sort of take a look at how this can work. And so in our second page of settings here, one of the ways you can do this is just via webcam tracking. So you don't need complicated hardware to do this. If you've got a computer with a webcam, I'm going to turn this on right here. And it's letting me know watermark's going to be on screen since I haven't paid for it. But once again, there might be some parts of it that you need to spend money on to get started, but other parts of it, if you want, you can. Okay, it looks like she's, okay. I'm gonna have to move the microphone here. Yeah, so you're seeing the dots there, and you're seeing how the system is tracking what I'm doing. Now, this is not an optimal setup.
It really got your
Jacob
shit.
This is not an optimal setup. Obviously, most people, if you've got a microphone for streaming, it's not going to be set on a tripod like this, and you're not going to be at an angle talking to an audience. But as you can see, it is tracking my lips, and it is at least moving the mouth. I really don't know what's going on with the eyes. I can.
Also, most
They're pretty
YouTubers use iPhones because iPhones have good face
Yeah.
recognition, so that's another thing that you can use to cheat down on
That's
it.
the other option here. So if we scroll down a little bit farther, yeah.
You can make pre-recorded content. We went over that.
Yeah. Just gonna get sad every time I leave the frame. Down here under the virtual webcam config, this is where you configure what's going out to your program like OBS. You can do that a couple different ways. But yeah, like Cody said, you can do this with an iPhone, and that way you can have like a mount maybe on your microphone, and it'll be much more seamless than this. A lot of the bigger VTubers, it's known that like HoloLive, they've got proprietary software that they use since they're a development company, and that's how they started. But they do use iPhones for their particular setup, because iPhones, you can also do this with an Android phone, I've done it, but iPhones have ARKit, which is part of their Face ID recognition system. It's got like lasers and IR sensors that it uses beyond just the camera processing. With an Android device, it would be more similar to what's going on here, which as you can see has limitations. So aside from that though, let's kind of turn that off, because that's distracting, okay. You can also, obviously you can set up expressions and poses for these characters that you can use manually, and a lot of YouTubers do this anyway, even if they've got really good tracking, especially when you're sitting at a desk. The webcam can't always pick up your full expressiveness, or maybe you want to be more expressive than you're even being IRL. with these very expressive anime style characters in the
Especially if you're
VTube
wearing
program.
glasses.
Yeah, and things like glasses that can prevent it from seeing properly when you're blinking or closing your eyes and stuff. You can go in here and set up expressions. We've got an expression editor here. So I'm going to create a new expression just to take a look at what that looks like. And we're going to have all of the different parameters that this model has had rigged in a program like Live 2D. So the Live 2D cubism step from earlier, that's going to limit what is or isn't available here in terms of options. But let's say I want to make a sad expression first. And I'm going to... Why am I doing what? Making her sad? Because I'm going to make her happy later and it'll be in contrast.
Oh, goodness.
Let's see. So we've got different positions. We can actually move her down a little bit when she's sad. I've got...
There's also preset default ones, but they don't work as good if you make them yourself.
Lower her face a little bit. We really need to find the ones for her face. And here we go. So mouth form, we can turn that down to a frown. And...
It's not nice.
Yeah. It happens. Don't mess with the eye visibility there. Eye shock visible. Just going through all the different options that we've got here. Tears movement, can we have? Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of tear overlay over her eyes.
Go down.
Go down.
On the shock.
Shock.
Under shock.
Under shock is tears, I see. Okay, so that's even more obvious. On. And yeah, we can control actually with this default rig, we can control the angle of the eyebrows to make her, really you can just go in and fine tune as much as you want to. So I'm just going to save that for an example. And then I'm going to create another one real quick. I'm going to call it happy. So that Cody gets off my case about making her sad. So for that one, we're going to bring her maybe a little bit higher. She's just stand a little bit taller. Normally you don't see the feet in a normal framing for your stream. Grab her angle of her head, turn it up a little bit too. And we're going to make sure her mouth form is smiling and have that on.
And then you can just hotkey these, so then you only have to hit one button.
Yeah, I'm going to
So
do that in
motion.
just a second so that you can see what that looks like. So I just want to make sure that all those things we applied in the sad one aren't applied in the happy one. We've actually got an eye smile right here. Eye shine, I think is what I was looking for. Yeah, so you can control that sort of light that you get in anime characters. Really, let's just go back and can I edit the sad one more time? Yeah, and then let's go grab that.
So you see, this is why people spend that money on getting it linked.
Yeah, because you've got all these nice options, and if you just rig it yourself super lazily, you might not have very many options besides just the breathing default animation. But now we can come down here, and I'm just going to delete a bunch of these hotkeys. I'll just come to the bottom. But I'm going to add a hotkey. I'm going to say hotkey action will be, we'll use set unset expression. Expression is going to be sad. And for that expression, I'm going to say whenever I hit the numpad 1 on my keyboard, she's going to be sad. We'll do the exact same thing right below it. So we're going to set unset expression, happy, and that one is going to be numpad 3. So now, I think if I close this settings page, then I can hit 1 to make her sad, and 3 to make her happy. She's kind of getting out of frame here. And obviously these are a little bit exaggerated. You wouldn't want your character shifting around that much vertically, obviously, when you're streaming. But you can go in here, and that's sort of how you can do this. Now, I've actually got a few different states here. I've got the sad animation applying. I've got the sad animation not applied, but the happy one's also not applied. I hit the happy one, she goes up even higher. And so the expressions can mix together is the point of showing you that. If you've got, say, an annoyed expression, but then you've also got like a throwing your arms up expression, you can activate them both to be annoyed and throwing your arms up if you get really frustrated with something in the game. But yeah, this also mixes in with the tracking if we want to try turning that on again.
Yeah, and then this with the new VTuber tech for Live 2D. they usually add stickers to showcase even more. So if you feel frustrated or have like that, that anime bracket up there, go like that. Or if you have tiers, it'll actually add that tiers. So it's been evolving. This is just a cheap version.
Yeah, this is just I wanted to set it up from scratch just to show you how you might get started if you install this on your computer later, because it's free to install on Steam. And yeah, this obviously isn't perfect. Like I said, her eyebrows, I set them in sad and didn't set them in happy, so now they look kind of sad even though she's in her happy expression. But you go through and you tweak all of that, and that's how you get your rigged up VTubers. So that will conclude the tech demo for now. Move that over. And so the last thing we wanted to touch on was what might be next for the VTuber industry. A lot of people in this room are already fans of VTubers, and obviously we're all excited about where they're going. And so we're going to talk about some of these have their own slides. I want to talk about augmented reality and also virtual reality. The differences between those, I think, augmented reality is bringing VTubers into the real world where you can sort of interact with them IRL. And then virtual reality is where you as a viewer are going to be going into VR, putting on a headset, and experiencing, interacting with them that way.
Yeah, HoloLive has an app where you can basically take a picture of the VTuber of your choice inside.
Yeah, that app is on the left here. It's called HoloLi. It's still pretty limited, but you can install it right now. It'll composite Tokino Sora in front of you in a location, and you can sort of interact with her in a basic way. Obviously, the actual streamer isn't on a video call with you when you're doing that. Everything's scripted. It's happening there. Exactly.
So they all feel to you.
It gives you things that you can do while she's not streaming that can sort of increase your level of connection with her, and then you go and watch her streams more, I guess, is the idea behind that.
So it's inside your heart.
Yeah. Now on the right here, HoloLive has been doing something really cool the past couple of years, and that is their concerts that they've been doing. And this is a short clip of their third concert that they did. So it wasn't their first concert, but it was the first one where they had this live 3D compositing of the models on top of a stage. This was a physical stage in Japan. They filled up a theater with 9,000 people. Unfortunately, this particular one was during COVID, so foreigners couldn't get in through the border to watch this. It was exclusive to Japanese people, but they had a live band playing the songs, and they had the voices and they had their dances there. And the people in this room were actually watching a flat screen on the main stage. They did have the cool 3D shots showing up on the side screens in that venue.
Like the Vocaloid stages.
It is similar, yeah, and it's got the same limitations as Vocaloid stages right now too, because Vocaloids, you can try to make like robots or androids of them, but that can look really creepy and not work well. Or you can do this kind of thing, but if you're actually there in person, it's not going to look as cool. I think the next big breakthrough, we're one breakthrough away from actually being able to see these people live, and that's creating some kind of 3D like holographic technology. We don't have that right now. It's really hard to display light where there's nothing. You need a medium if it's smoke or water. And you need ways to make the light actually stop and go towards the viewer. And that's not in development as far as I know. But VTubers might be part of what pushes that technology forward. I was very impressed, like I said, by this. This concert was what made me kind of start to think of VTubers as a larger industry, not just like a cool thing that one channel is doing online, but like something that is, like I said, it's pushing technology, it's pushing the bounds of it in some ways.
HoloLive EN just sold out a concert over July, I think it was?
Yeah, they did one over the summer in LA. It was in California, and it was just the English branch. They had some guests from the Japanese branch, but they have started doing this in the States too for us, which is nice.
Over 10,000 sold seats.
Yeah, and then going back to virtual reality and VTubers, so on the right there, HoloLive also sometimes does concerts where optionally you can plug into VR and you can go in there and watch their stage, and this is much easier on their end. Obviously, it increases the barrier to entry for viewers. If you need to buy a VR headset, that can be expensive, or not everyone has space for it, or not everyone wants one. But if you have one, then you can go in and sort of watch those concerts live, and then you are there, unlike watching the flat screen in real life in that venue. And the other thing that they're starting to use virtual reality for is actually virtual sets. And this might actually end up wrapping its way back around to pre-recorded content. A lot of YouTubers nowadays do regular old live streams all the time, but with virtual sets, you can basically not have to worry about like construction or makeup on your talents, or a lot of different things that you have to worry about when you're making just films and stuff IRL. So yeah, some people are doing that. Artificial intelligence is another big one. On the left here is not an AI VTuber, but it's a VTuber who, she's interesting. She didn't want her real voice online, so she actually used a speech-to-text system to capture what she's saying, and then a text-to-speech system to play that back out with a synthesized voice. And so that way she's able to talk and not have her voice connected with her character at all. On the right, we've actually got a full AI VTuber. She's named Neurosama, and she's fairly new, like the past year or so, I think. But yeah, she's actually, the developer is the turtle down there in the bottom right. He streams with that avatar. But yeah, he's basically making this AI that responds to stimuli on screen. She can play video games, she can look at pictures and comment about what's in the pictures because the AI can scan that and come up with comments about it. She's done collaborations with many other human VTubers and she responds to what they're saying. And so a lot of the earlier VTubers have had characters where their fictional character is an AI, so you don't have to think about the fact that there's a human behind it. We're kind of getting into that space where now we can actually do that.
Future.
And then the last main slide here is just some terminologies in the VTuber fandom, just for anyone who is new to the fandom. It sounded like most of you guys probably know most of this, but yeah, Oshi is basically just your favorite VTuber. TSKR, kind of a complicated, nuanced thing in terms of why that Japanese is used, because it just means something helped, but it basically means like you like something or something that's really, yeah. Kusa is the Japanese character for grass, and they use that for lol because to them, typing LOL looks like grass. And so Mama is sometimes used to designate an artist who designed or drew a model. Papa is the model's rigger sometimes. Sometimes they just use the genders of the actual people who did it, but sometimes they categorize it like that. Titin, or Titin, is precious, innocent, cute. Zatsudan is just a miscellaneous talking stream. I'm going through this really quick because we're almost out of time. Yeah, Kaigai Niki is us, that's overseas fans. Akasupa is just a red super chat, $100 or more USD, and then an anti is a toxic hater, not just somebody who doesn't like VTubers, but someone who's actively disrupting, so you don't want to be labeled that.
Yeah, they're not cool.
So yeah, that gets us through the presentation. I know we ran up on the end of our time here, but thanks everyone for coming out. You can go to this URL or scan the QR code if you want to look up any of those characters who are in. So thank you.